Originally, this property was granted in part by Peter Stuyvesant to Isaac Taine in 1655, and it extended from the waterfront to 2nd Street. George Read I was born in Maryland on September 18, 1733. He began to study law with an attorney in Philadelphia until he was about 15, when he moved to Newcastle to become a lawyer. In 1765, he was elected to the Delaware legislature, where he was one of the leading opponents to British taxes. He was sent to the Continental Congress in 1774, where he served until 1777. In the turbulent times leading up to the American Revolution, George Read was actually opposed to independence, believing that Delaware was not yet ready to separate from England. As a result of these beliefs, he voted against independence on July 2, 1776. Yet once independence was declared, Read thought it was best for Delaware to unite with the rest of the country, so he shifted gears and signed the Declaration. George Read is perhaps most revered for being a signer of all three great state papers: the Petition to the King, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. In fact, he even signed the Constitution twice. At the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, another delegate, John Dickinson, had to leave the convention early because of illness, and authorized George Read to sign the document in his place. Read was also incredibly important to the speedy approval of the Constitution in Delaware, and as a result, Delaware became the first state by approving the Constitution on December 7, 1787. George Read's house was the last building on this side of the Strand that was destroyed during the fire of 1824. His son's house next door was only saved by the work of several Wilmington fire companies and of individuals continually soaking the roof with water. In 1870, William Thompson Read, the grandson of George Read the signer, described his grandfather's house in this way.
This mansion was an old-fashioned brick structure, looking very comfortable, but with no pretensions to elegance. It contained a spacious hall, on one side of which was a large parlor or drawing room, on the other Mr. Read's office. Behind it, the dining room of sufficient size, and in its rear a large kitchen. The extensive garden ran back to the grounds, where were the stables and other outbuildings.
George Read I died in Newcastle in 1798 and is buried in the Emmanuel churchyard. William Thompson Read also characterized his grandfather like this.
His manners were dignified, and his dignity may have occasionally bordered on austerity. He avoided trifling occupations, disliked familiarity, and could not tolerate the smallest violation of good manners, for which he was himself distinguished. A strict and consistent moralist, he granted no indulgence to laxity of principle in others, and he was remarkably averse to that qualified dependence which an obligation necessarily produces. In person, Mr. Read was above the middle size, erect and dignified in his demeanor, and remarkable for his attention to personal arrangements. In fine, he was an excellent husband, a good father, son, and brother, an indulgent master, an upright judge, a fearless patriot, and a just man.
George Read II, an attorney and son of Delaware's famous signer, completed his house to the right of his father's in 1801. It's a 22-room, 14,000-square-foot mansion that costs an estimated $12,000 to build. The house features the work of Philadelphia master craftsman Peter Crowding, whose work we've seen before. It's an example of the Adams style, sometimes called the Federal style of architecture. Features to note include the Palladian window on the second floor, the arched fanlight over the door, and the central stair hall. You'll also notice Peter Crowding's extensive punch and gouge woodwork around the door, similar to what we saw at the Wiley House and the Academy. If you choose to visit the Read House, you'll see how this woodwork is used throughout the interior of the house as well. Read lived in this house until his death in September of 1836. He now lies buried in the Emmanuel churchyard. The second owner of the home, William Cooper, installed the Read House Gardens in 1847, and they occupy all of the land where George Read I's house was. The 1.5-acre garden had three main sections: a formal parterre flower garden, a specimen garden filled with exotic and native plants, and a large fruit orchard and kitchen garden.